Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Selby series. Selby is one of 11 subdivisions of the county of North Yorkshire. It's made up of 74 civil parishes, a lot of which are very small. Which one are we in this week? Okay, today in Selby I've got the only parish in the district that begins with the letter U, and it's a little bit difficult to pronounce, but I think I've got this right. This is Ulleskelf. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Ulleskelf is a village and civil parish in the Selby district of North Yorkshire, 4 miles from Tadcaster on the River Wharfe. It's situated on a railway line and it has its own station, something we'll get a closer look at towards the end of this episode. For starters, we need to cross that railway line and head for Main Street. A village of a modest size, Oleskelf does well for itself no matter which way you slice it. Aside from the station, it also has a shop and a pub, the rear of which can be seen here. It's also got a bus service or two as well. This sign tells you about the number 825 bus, which I think may be a new service. Online sources state the numbers 492, 493, 494 and the T2. Here's a look at that railway line. Despite the station here not seeing a great amount of trains which stop, it's still a busy line, with passing trains heading for York on a regular basis. We're coming now onto Church Fenton Lane at this point here, continuing north to its junction with Main Street. Before we go any further, let's see some basic information about the village. Oleskelf comes from the Scandinavian personal name Ulfr, which forms the first part of the village's name. Skelf is an Old English term meaning a flat area or shelf, if you will. This then was Ulfr's shelf, and it was a Viking settlement, likely built in a strategic place along the river. It was written in the Domesday Book as Oleschel and Oleslec. Like most of the villages in this part of Selby, Ulleskelf formed a part historically of the West Riding of Yorkshire until 1974. Main Street is certainly not straight. It has a couple of what I'll term S-bends in it. On one of those S-bends is the village shop, which is also the local post office. Now, religious buildings wise, Oleskelf does have them, but this one is not used as such anymore. This is the former St Saviour's Church and associated church hall. These days it's used as Oleskelf's Village Hall. According to Oleskelf's village website linked below, this has its own committee and you can hire the committee room for £10 an hour. On the wall here is a notice board. There's an advert here for the Ulleskelf Ale and Gin Festival. This year it took place on June the 11th, offering 8 beers and 12 gins, plus cider, lager, wine and Prosecco. I was gutted because I had plans on June the 11th. It's a fundraising event and I imagine it's an annual one too. Here's my card, finding its way onto the self-same notice board. Ulleskelf as a community holds plenty of events like that. The village website mentions local circuit training sessions run every Monday on the local sports field. And much like neighbouring Ryther, the village's location close to the river means it's constantly on flood watch. The village has a voluntary group called Ulleskelf Emergency Flood Group. There's some eggs for sale here, £2 for a dozen. This gives me a chance to mention Ulleskelf's community sharing shelf, which you can find outside the post office. That's in today's picture bit. As we come to the end of Main Street, we have Ulleskelf Old Hall, a charming property dating from 1780 and extensively refurbished during the last 10 years. So what we've seen so far here in Ulleskelf is the older part Main Street, and there's a footpath which will link us back to the other end of the village. It's just there, and we'll be taking that shortly. Down the other end of the village, it tends to be sort of more modern housing, more recent developments. We'll have a look at those in a short while. Just gonna have a quick look up Ings Road first and see if there's anything up here. There's not a lot down here, in all honesty, save for one thing which was fascinating. That would be a workshop owned by a local man who has something of a passion for weaving. A dying art, willow weaving is making something of a revival in this part of the world. That's a little prelude for next week's episode, but here it's been a thing for over 150 years. In his late 70s, John Taylor runs J W Taylor Ltd, which was started by his great-grandfather, and it's been at its current site in the village, right here, since 1867, still using traditional methods. Taylor grows his own willow, which is soaked in water to make it pliable, and imports rattan cane from Indonesia. They make anything from pet carriers to shopping trolleys, all out of weaved willow. At the end of Ings Road, there's a footpath which links it to a track which will take us down to the B1223. This is as close as the walk gets to the River Wharf. It's down there somewhere. High above the village, there were some aircraft around. You may recall from Church Fenton, there's a lot of air traffic here due to the proximity of Leeds East Airport. Right, let's see how many Harry Potter fans we have out there. If I had a magic wand right now, I would need it for this next street because it's got the same name as a type of creature that you find in the Harry Potter series. If I had my wand, I'd be ready to shout the word ridiculous. For those not familiar with Harry Potter, a Bogart is a shape-shifting creature which takes the form of its observer's worst fear. Ridiculous is the spell that you would use to combat one. You might not think it though, but J.K. Rowling clearly did her homework. Boggarts are in fact local folklore in certain areas of the country. This is one of them. They supposedly lived in boggart holes. It may not be Ulleskelf, but I've included a link below to a brilliant article about them and how many people in the northwest historically had encounters with them. That footpath we've just used has taken us to Intake Farm, where it joins the other footpath seen back at the corner of Ings Road. This will take us back to Church Fenton Lane. This path was handy, but it had one major drawback: lots and lots of these gates. It seems to run almost through some people's back gardens, this too. As I walked along it, the surface changed on a regular basis, leading me to think that maybe the residents here are responsible for its upkeep, a little like Newbold's Beck and its riparian owners. Ah, now this is a bit of a bonus. I didn't know this footpath passed this cemetery here. I had no idea that this was here. Sometimes, when you look on the map and you think you've found all the landmarks that you're going to pass, there are still a few that surprise you. Whilst St Saviour's may no longer be a church, Oleskelf Methodist Church is still going strong. It has weekly Sunday services and seasonal festivals, like for example the Harvest Festival in October. Now we're on Church Fenton Lane, and next we have the village's pub, the Ulleskelf Arms. This is open 7 days a week and it serves food from Wednesday through to Monday. Monday nights at the pub have a tagline: Monday night is pie night. I don't know, pies at the pub and a beer festival. Why don't I live here? Tell me that, people. Jokes aside, there's not much wrong with Rotherham. Moving on, we have Viking Garage next as we walk down Church Fenton Lane, the name of which is clearly a reference to Ulleskelf's heritage. Next to that is Greenfields, one of the areas of new housing towards the village's south. Beyond Greenfields, it's generally more of the same thing. That is, until you reach the northern outskirts of Church Fenton and the housing estates at the former RAF base, Leeds East Airport. Those also fall within Oleskelf, as does most of the airfield. Okay, it's just taken a perch in this bus shelter for a few moments because it's threatening rain. I'm hoping it doesn't. Selby has this horrible habit, doesn't it, of being bad weather. Every time I come up to Selby, the skies are always overcast and there's always water in the air, Well, at the moment it hasn't started to rain yet, but it's threatening to, so hopefully this will pass. Our next destination is the railway station after we catch Weekdale Road, that is, another area of new builds off Church Fenton Lane. Oleskelf Station was the venue for a parish notice board episode a few weeks ago. Well done if you successfully worked out where I was. Let's have a proper look at the station now. On the same line as Church Fenton, Ulleskelf opened in 1839 on the York and North Midland Railway, near to the line's crossing point of the River Wharf. I've included a picture of that crossing point in today's picture bit. It avoided the beaching acts in the mid-1960s due to the poor road network in the area and there being no easily accessible road bridge over the river for York-bound commuters. Today the station is unstaffed, with all trains operated by Northern. Though there are 4 tracks in the vicinity, the island platform only serves the eastern pair. There are 12 trains which call at the station on weekdays and Saturdays, 6 to York, 3 to Leeds and 3 to Hull. Sundays see 13 trains oddly. You can reach Blackpool and Bridlington from here as well. I think the rain that was threatening has now disappeared, but now I'm in another place which would keep me sheltered for a while if it did start to rain, and that's here on the platform at Oleskelf Station. An ideal place to introduce today's picture bit. Here it comes right now. Finishing off the main walk, we cross back over the railway line again and we come to Ulleskelf Sports Field, a vast open space to the village's west. Ulleskelf junior football team, founded in 1998 by Ulleskelf resident Ken Gray, play here. It has over 100 players throughout its various age groups. The parish council also managed to purchase an extra piece of land to extend the children's playground early in 2015. There's also a basketball area on the sports field, which is designed for older children. And that leads us back to the B1223 and our walk is complete, barring the bit back to the car, which was parked at West End, close to the railway station. So the wind is starting to get stronger now and it is starting to spit with rain, which means I've timed this virtually perfectly because I'm just a couple of paces away from the car. I've enjoyed that. That's been a nice walk around Ulleskelf, certainly one of the most interesting villages I've seen so far in Selby. Nothing against the others, but for some reason I've really liked this one. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed walking around it. And it's time for me to move on to my next one, which is equally as interesting. I'm hoping this rain holds off though. If it doesn't, I might be wet by the end of it. But you know me, I'll walk around in the rain. I don't mind at all. This has been the parish of Ulleskelf, and I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.